Hello students, today we'll talk about Aristotle's theory of tragedy as given in Poetics. As you all know, Aristotle's Poetics is considered a landmark in the field of literary criticism. Poetics deals with art of poetry in general and tragedy in particular. Students, actually tragedy is the major concern of Poetics. And since centuries, Poetics has been the central document for the literary scholars, for the literary critics, while analyzing, while discussing the art of tragedy. And Aristotle considered tragedy to be the highest poetic form. And all his ideas or his approach towards tragedy as it is discussed in Poetics was basically in the form of his observations of his contemporary playwrights such as Sophocles and Euripides. Students, Sophocles and Euripides were famous Greek playwrights and they wrote specifically tragedies only. And Aristotle read their tragedies, and after reading those tragedies, he just jotted down his observations just to provide a critique to those very writings. And his observations has now become the well-known, the famous, the widely read theory of tragedy. Aristotle has discussed his theory of tragedy in Poetics in chapter 6. In chapter 6, Aristotle has given a very detailed definition of tragedy, and this definition speaks a lot about what tragedy is and how it is structured and what is the function of a tragedy. So let's see what he says in the chapter 6. I quote, "A tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, and also as having magnitude and complete in itself, in a language embellished with pleasing accessories, each kind brought separately in the parts of the work, in a dramatic, not in a narrative form, with incidents arousing pity and fear, wherewith to accomplish its catharsis of such emotions." Students, let's try to analyze, to understand this definition in parts. In the first part, he is talking about tragedy as an imitation. In my previous video, I have discussed in detail that how he talks about art of poetry as a form of imitation, as a form of creative reproduction. So here he is also talking about tragedy as an imitation. In his theory of imitation, he has discussed in detail about the three elements of imitation, and on the basis of those three elements there are different forms of art. He has told us about the object of imitation, manner of imitation, and medium of imitation. So here in this first part he is talking about the object of imitation in a tragedy. So what is the object of imitation in a tragedy? An action that is serious, means a serious action, a serious action. And that action, he has just used the adjective serious. Although this term or this word or this adjective serious has not been discussed in detail in the chapter 6, but the serious word is for something grand, something epic, and the object of imitation in a tragedy is the serious action. Then there is another word, also as having magnitude. Here, besides being serious, the action must have a certain magnitude. So the term magnitude is not here for something important or something dignified. It actually refers to the size. Means a tragedy must be of a right length, an accurate length, a correct length. Means it must not be so long that it cannot be grasped in its entirety without confusion, or neither must it be so short that its part cannot be explained or understood properly. Then he uses the word complete in action. Complete in itself means there is an action, and that action is serious, and that action is having magnitude, and then that action is complete in itself, means that action has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And here if we just use one word for this serious action, or this action with a magnitude, or the action which is complete in itself, we can say Aristotle is talking about the plot of tragedy. Means how the things will be represented, how an action will be represented in a tragedy. In the next part he says, in a language embellished with pleasing accessories. Here he is talking about the medium of imitation in a tragedy. So the medium of imitation of tragedy is a language. And how is that language? That language is embellished with, furnished with pleasing accessories. And here he has used the word embellishment for the verse and song. Means verse is used for the dialogues in a tragedy, and the chorus speaks a song. There are chorus. There are a group of singers who sing songs. Songs are also incorporated in the structure of tragedy. So here in this part of this definition, Aristotle is talking about the medium of tragedy. And what is that medium of tragedy? A language embellished with pleasing accessories. And how it is embellished, how it is just enriched or prospered or decorated with verse and song. Two things. Verse is for dialogue, and song is for the chorus. Each kind brought separately in the parts of the work. Each kind means one is verse and another is song. So verse is used in the dialogues and dialogue part, and the songs are used in the part which is covered by the chorus, the group of singers. So in the what does he talk in the next part of the definition? In a dramatic, not in a narrative form. Here he is talking about the manner of imitation in tragedy. That tragedy is presented dramatically, not in a narrative form. So this is how Aristotle has tried to explain that how a tragedy is processed, how a tragedy is framed. So what does he say in the last part of the this definition? With incidents arousing pity and fear, wherewith to accomplish its catharsis of such emotions. Here Aristotle is talking about the function of tragedy. What is the function of tragedy? The function of tragedy is to arouse, to appeal the feelings of, the emotions of pity and fear. And why to arouse these two emotions? Because a tragedy is aimed for the catharsis. The catharsis word is used with reference to purification. We will discuss about this term catharsis in detail in our next videos. So here Aristotle is talking about the function of tragedy. The function of tragedy is to arouse, to appeal the feelings of pity and fear, and by arousing such emotions, a tragedy is aimed at to purify, to purgate these feelings. So thus in this detailed definition, Aristotle has just provided his theory of tragedy. In that 6th chapter of Poetics, where he has given this definition, Aristotle has discussed in detail the 6 formative elements of tragedy just on the basis of this definition only. Let's see what those 6 elements are. The first is plot, second one is character, and third one is thought. plot is the action which is being imitated in the tragedy, or in general we can say plot can be explained or defined as a sequence of actions, sequence of events as presented in a work of art. Here he is talking about tragedy, so sequence of events or sequence of actions as they are imitated in tragedy. Then there is character. So a serious action is there, and who is going to represent that action? Character is there. Then third one is thought. The element of thought is considered to be we can say the theme or the central point or the message of that tragedy. So here we can say these three elements, plot, character and thought, they are the internal aspects of a tragedy, because they are the object of its imitation. Basically, tragedy is a form of poetry which imitates an action. So what does it imitate and how it imitates? How it imitates, that is the external part. So the internal part is that what does it imitates. So the object of imitation, three aspects, three elements are plot, character and thought. We will discuss in detail about plot and character in our next videos. The last three elements, diction, song and spectacle, they are generally explained as external aspects of tragedy. Students, as I have just made it clear to you in my video on theory of imitation also, and while explaining the definition of tragedy in the first part of this video also, that he is also talking about the language of tragedy also, language, and is talking about the embellishment of the language, the selection of the words, the dialogue. So here the diction word is for the selection of words or the dialogues. In just one term we can say here diction is for the language of poetry, and that language is the medium. And then songs are also the medium. So diction and song, they are the medium of imitation of serious action in a tragedy. Then lastly, spectacle is there. Spectacle word is for the dramatic representation of an action. Means in a tragedy, the action is not narrated only. It is to be played upon. It is to be presented on stage. So these are the 6 elements of tragedy which has been discussed in detail by Aristotle in the 6th chapter of his Poetics. And we will discuss in detail about plot in our next video. Thank you.